Well, the Warriors are off for a few more days, but we're not. Bay Area sports insiders coming up. Warriors, Raiders, 49ers talk coming at you next. And I'm coming back on one. All right, welcome into Bay Area Sports Insiders. I'm your host, Courtney Cronin. For those of you joining us on mercurynews.com and eastbaytimes.com, we welcome you in to our third episode. Also, those streaming this broadcast live on our 3 Facebook channels. Joining me now, critically acclaimed author of the new book, Golden, Story on Stephen Curry. I have not had my copy signed yet, so I'm kind of hoping that that's something that we will be able to do on this show. Bay Area News Group columnist Marcus Thompson, how's it going? You hold it to get here, so I hope that this is worth it for you.
Anytime I get some book promo out of it, it's not worth it. I mean, you just plug Golden, so we're good.
All right, we may get to a little bit on the book if we have time, but there is a lot of time right now. That's kind of the whole theme of this week. The Warriors, after wrapping up the series against Utah, they have some time to rest, to get refocused for the Western Conference Finals. We could know tonight whether that's going to happen, Spurs and the Rockets in a Game 6 back in Houston. But up to this point, they sweep Portland, they sweep Utah, and the boring word has been thrown out there. I mean, is this series kind of boring so far?
Man, it is boring. It's, as we would say in Oakland, it's hella boring. Because, not only do we know the result, right? At no point is it even coming to mind that they're going to lose the series. And scarcely do you even think they might lose the game. But I think also another difference is they are so loaded, we aren't getting heroics, right? Even last year when you knew what the outcome was, but Steph was, doing crazy stuff. But now, it's so divided, we don't even get the crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like 3 dudes scoring 20 instead of 1 dude getting 50. So we lost some of the theatrics. We lost the suspense. We lost the drama. You really have to appreciate good basketball for it not to be boring. You got to watch Draymond and appreciate defense and watch. You got to get your kicks from passing and stuff like that. Otherwise, if you just want some dudes dunking or doing crazy threes or some drama, yeah, it's boring.
So we expected, obviously, this to happen. And going into the Western Conference Finals, are they going to be challenged? I mean, I think the best game that we saw from both of those teams was when Houston was just shooting lights out from 3 on December 1st when they beat the Warriors in double overtime. But the Warriors have been really good at defending the 3. I mean, do either of these teams pose that big of a challenge? And we'll get to some of the injuries that could potentially affect those matchups.
I mean, look, one thing we learned from last year is, it may look easy, but,
Mike Brown doesn't think it's easy.
You got to leave room, right? You got to leave room for great players to do, things we haven't seen before. That's what happened last year. LeBron and even Kyrie started doing great stuff. So Kawhi could do that. James Harden could do that. But how many games does it get them? That's kind of the difference. Do they have another dude who can do it? I don't see Houston or San Antonio challenging them. If for nothing else, this series is a hard-fought series. There's injuries. They might just be banged up. So you won't get peak Spurs or peak Rockets. And on top of that, they're just not good enough. And that's the bottom line. The Warriors are their biggest foe.
So what we know right now is both teams, regardless of who they face, they're going to be facing at lesser strength than what they would be. Starting with Tony Parker, that takes away a big backcourt element for the Spurs. The left, the right ruptured left quadricep, I believe.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, because the adductor was for Nene.
So all I know is he was just sitting there looking at his knee and it wasn't moving. I was like, yeah, that's done.
Yeah, and you'll see the picture there on the broadcast in just a second. So how does that change what the matchup could possibly be? Because obviously you have a reserve center in Nene who is, that's obviously posing a huge matchup challenge regardless, but Mike D'Antoni has only played 7 guys in Game 5. He's not going deep into the bench. And with the Spurs, that changes. Kawhi says he is going to play in Game 6, despite sitting out that overtime period on the bench. They now go really small. Are we seeing probably the best small ball lineup in the playoffs with that group?
I think both injuries actually help them when they face the Warriors. I mean, the bottom line is the Warriors would love for them to run Nene out there. It's they're just gonna run that dude. I mean, his beard is gray. He can't keep up with them. They're please do that. That's a mistake teams make by saying we're gonna play big against the Warriors because they look small, and then Draymond blocks a shot at the rim, and then you're off at the fast break. So similarly with San Antonio, it's an advantage because all they were going to do was milk Tony Parker. Whoever he's guarding was going to get buckets. Now you can put a better defender in there. You can put somebody who can switch more. So it might help them in the long run. I think both. So Houston's problem is they can't defend. Like, they got to be able to defend. And you start thinking, all right, Patrick Beverly's on Steph. Like, who's on Clay? Maybe Trevor Ariza. Okay, now who's on Durant? And you just start running out of answers. And with San Antonio, I don't know if they can score enough. Like, that's what we're seeing with Houston. They can't score enough to put Houston away. So Kawhi's going to get you 30. Where the other 20 coming from? Is it Danny Green? Is it Patty Mills? You just don't know. So they both have unique problems. And I just look. I don't want to write them off, but I don't see how it goes past 5 in either series. Maybe 6 is like, man, they really went all out. They played great.
So let's take a look at this first half of the postseason. The Warriors there at the halfway mark. So games will either start in the Western Conference Finals on Sunday or they will start on Tuesday. You saw Kevin Durant there in Game 3, 38 points, 13 rebounds, the whole, I've been doing this comment. You see Zaza Pachulia outscoring Clay. But in terms of the game ball that you give to a player from this first half of the postseason, really, I think in the whole postseason, it's got to be Draymond Green. There's been no other player in this series who's been able to change a game the way he has.
I mean, first off, I should get the game ball. Because
you should get the game ball for the way you ran here.
Man, I've been, I've been kind of fire lately. I don't know if y'all really paying attention. No, I've been the opposite of fire. Draymond, for me, is the MVP. It's the obvious answer. I could see Kevin Durant just because when they were challenged, like he came up with big shots. But, like, there's nobody playing both ends like Draymond. Part of it, Steph is getting lost. He's not scoring 30, but he's playing great defense, so that helps. But Draymond is like Deboing other teams, and he's doing on defense what we see Steph and Clay and Durant do on offense. So for me, it's clearly Draymond. He might be the Finals MVP just because these dudes, they're gonna share the wealth. So who's gonna get 50? Like, it's not gonna happen. They're gonna divide it up. They'll all score efficiently. But Draymond's going to stand out because he's going to be like one dude back there taking on the whole team. So,
and it's funny, taking a look at this whole matchup that before the season started, I think a lot of critics were pointing to the fact that the Warriors didn't have a rim protector and that the center position could be this team's Achilles heel. And now we see JaVale McGee, Zaza Pachulia, David West becoming some of the most efficient centers in the entire postseason. David West kind of had the better matchup against Utah, and with the way that these three are playing right now, who becomes, I guess, the guy going forward in either matchup?
None of them. Like, it's just like, those three, it'll be like whoever has the best matchup and whoever's playing well, and it's all just biding time until Draymond, right? That's it. I mean, that's the bottom line, because eventually they're going to go small and run you, and all of three of those guys, like, you can take advantage of them. I think David West is probably the better of the three, and I think JaVale is great off the bench. But in the end, it boils down to Draymond's going to shut down the middle. So if you try to throw Aldridge, Gasol out there, or Clint Capella, like, you're in trouble because he's the best center they have, period. Bottom line, no question. And also, if he's at center, the break starts. They get into, which is what they want to do anyway. So those other three guys are fillers, and that's kind of like a feel. Whatever Mike Brown's feeling, you kind of go with that guy. If they need some energy, they'll go with JaVale. But it's all biding time until you can put Draymond at center and not kill him. And if San Antonio goes big, you might see a little bit of him. You might see a lot of Zaza, David West for the physicality. But at some point, it's going to be he's the center of this team. So whoever didn't see that coming, like, clearly wasn't paying attention.
So those three leading the NBA right now in defensive efficiency and field goal defense within 5 feet of the basket. We were going to get to the headlines game, running a little bit short on time, so Marcus's favorite game of catchphrase will have to wait to another week. Let's get to some Twitter questions, though. There were some good ones that came through this week. The first one from Kine_fresh. What improvements or changes do you think the Dubs can make to the second unit to improve it moving deeper into the playoffs.
Man, you need to stop playing all those dudes. That's the
You
improvements.
were on the Ian Clark train for the longest time, and then you became.
I ain't worried about Ian Clark. Ian Clark is good. Play Ian Clark, but you can't go running those. You don't want to go 10 deep. You go 8 deep. The answer is to make sure you got 2 all-stars in the second unit. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter anyway. Go 1 by 15, 20 points, and the bench is going to play. That's when they should play. I feel like part of the problem last year, why they don't have a second championship, is because Steve Kerr went too deep on the bench. You play Varejao and Azili. At some point, you got to cut them dudes off. So we might be at the time where you don't play Ian Clark or whatever. But as it gets harder and harder, you gotta ride your horses.
We've got a question coming through on Twitter from Bill John, 44175585. Wow, that is a Twitter handle. Do Warriors learn from last year and put the ball in Curry's hands more and go 1-on-1 like they did in 2015?
Look, Mike Brown that might be Mike Brown's philosophy. I know Steve Kerr doesn't really like 1-on-1, at least not to start the play. But look, there's a few things that might have. Mike Brown, who's coached Kobe and LeBron James, he knows how to ride your star. And then number 2, Steph might be done with that. Oh, I'm just gonna do what the coach says. Like Steph might be like, look, man, I'm going for this. And then number 3, just because there's just so much to guard, he just might have the better matchup, because you really got to make a decision. Who's my best defender guard? If you put it on Kevin Durant, the second best defender is on Curry. So it might point that way out of necessity.
All right, that's going to do it for our Warriors Western Conference Final preview. Want to thank Marcus. Be sure to get your copy of Golden, available wherever books are sold. I don't know, maybe at Barnes & Noble, a lot of other places, to be sure to pick up your copy on that. Well, it's football season year-round. It really hasn't been much of an off-season for the San Francisco 49ers and for the Oakland Raiders. Busy week coming up, or busy week last week with rookie minicamp. Cam Inman was there, our 49ers beat writer, here to break it all down going forward into the rest of the quote-unquote off-season. So this really hasn't been much of a break for you for anything. Let's get into some of the meat of this, because what we saw, everybody was accounted for there at rookie minicamp. We didn't see a lot from Reuben Foster. He's recovering from the injury. The 49ers denying that he needs additional surgery, anything along those lines. Mm-hmm. Where does he fit into this mix? Because we're getting to Navarro Bowman in a minute. Yeah, some of those crazy rumors out there, but we see what Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, and some of the praise that this could be, somebody arguably biggest rookie impact. At the weak side linebacker position, though they're not able to fit him in any of that right now, how are they getting him ready for that role that he might fit into?
Well, yeah, what we saw at the rookie minicamp was he wasn't allowed to participate in drills, but he was off to the side with D'Amico Ryans. He used to be an NFL linebacker who's now getting to start as an assistant coach. So he's kind of in the learning stage before they turn him loose. These few weeks left in the off-season program, it's just kind of learn the scheme, all right? And then once you get to training camp, he should be cleared. He says he's going to be okay.
He says he's ready now, but that was...
Every player says they are, pretty much, for the most part. And so the Niners have to make sure they don't overdo it with him, because he's only a few months out from a rotator cuff surgery, a surgery that we really don't know for sure is taken or not. So, once they get into training camp, they'll have a better idea on where he's going to fit in that linebacker unit with Navarro Bowman, Malcolm Smith. There's a few other guys, Ray Armstrong, that are part of it. The Niners feel better about their linebacker unit than last year, obviously, where last year they were bringing in safeties, outside linebackers to fill holes.
Which is why it's so funny that the rumor comes up earlier today that Navarro Bowman's potentially on the trading block. Yeah. Does that come from, obviously the 49ers vehemently denied that. Uh-huh. Does that come from the fact of his injuries, the ACL tear that ended his season last year? Where's that coming from?
Well, let me just say, out of all the players probably on their roster, Navarro Bowman's might be the most untradeable one. Yeah. Because one, yes, you bring up his injury history. He's missed almost 2 of the past 3 seasons with leg injuries. Mm-hmm. But 2, he got a massive contract extension last year, so they can't afford, no team's going to take on that much money. The Niners would have to take about a $15 million cap hit or more to get rid of him now if they did that. They have the room to do it, but there's no reason to. Because it's not as if they have a ton of inside linebackers that are great, a ton of guys waiting to be the defensive leader, so to speak, or want to take on that vocal leadership role. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan came out immediately today and said that rumor or that report is false. They're not trying to trade him. And 2 weeks ago, Michael Lombardi is the one that reported from the Ringer, former Raiders and NFL executive. He also reported during the draft that they were trying to trade Vance McDonald. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch came out and said that's true. Okay, so they're being very upfront on what's going on, which was very rare to hear front office execs or anybody confirm a trade report. Vance McDonald wasn't traded; he's back. It just doesn't make sense for them to trade Navarro Bowman. I don't give any credence to that report.
And before we get into talks about the 49ers quarterback of the future, I wanted to jump back on Colin Kaepernick, which, at this point it's May, and he still doesn't have a team. I know that you answered this in your mailbag over at mercurynews.com today. Are you surprised? I mean, what's going on in these NFL circles as to why, outside of football, he's being active in all the causes he was active in last year? Is that playing a role why he doesn't have a job right now?
I'd absolutely have to think so. Everybody doesn't want to say that's the case, but I think every NFL team says, well, he wasn't a very good quarterback. He wasn't great, and obviously the team wasn't great around him. But he had accuracy issues. He became just another guy, another quarterback. And so does a team want to take on that extra burden of we're going to have to deal with these social issues? Well, I think a lot of the distraction talk is it's meaningless because, you go back to like a training camp last year where Tim Tebow would be brought in just as a camp arm. Well, he's a big distraction, but guess what? That keeps all the conversation off the guys you don't want to be talking about, maybe hidden gems. But I think a lot of teams right now are saying we don't want to have to deal with Colin and everything, all the baggage that comes with him. And to get him up to speed in a whole new system, this is really working against him in that he's already 2 months behind in a possible new program wherever he might end up. And I think where he's going to end up is once a starter or somebody goes down in the training camp or exhibition season, well, all this sociological and political background noise will be overshadowed by people saying, we need a quarterback in here now. Just get Colin Kaepernick in, see if we can win with him. Because once the NFL games get going, fans want to win games.
49ers brought in C.J. Beathard from Iowa as a developmental prospect. He was the sixth quarterback taken overall in the 2017 draft. Kyle Shanahan kind of pulling a fast one there. A lot of people going back into the third round to get him. How do you anticipate what he comes in to do in learning under guys like Brian Hoyer, knowing that, injuries happen in this sport, as you just mentioned with Colin Kaepernick taking that opportunity. Could we potentially see him later down the stretch, whatever happens with this 49ers team, see some early
No, I don't think so, because I think right now Brian Hoyer's in because he knows Kyle Shanahan's system, and part of that, he's also, they're going to be in the quarterback rooms, which is going to be great for C.J. Beathard. He's going to be learning from a guy who's been in Kyle Shanahan's system before. And so he's going to be learning the ropes of being a pro. He's going to learn about Kyle Shanahan's system. He's not going to be rushed into action, obviously. He's not a guy that comes in highly touted as if I just came off winning a national championship. But he did win a lot of games his junior year and took Iowa to the Rose Bowl. So the Niners like that winning pedigree. They like his toughness. His grandfather was a longtime NFL general manager with Washington and San Diego. So kind of the dark horse quarterback candidate that wasn't really talked about, but now that he's on the team, somewhat makes sense.
And we've been talking a lot about, offense here, and I guess we'll stay on that.
Well, that's the 49ers. We can talk about quarterbacks for a half hour.
To stay on that to wrap this segment up, I mean, you take a look at Joe Williams and where he was, Kyle Shanahan had to convince the war room that this is the pick that they needed to make there in the fourth round. Knowing what we know and knowing what we've seen very briefly in minicamp, I mean, is this somebody that you expect to come in and actually help take the load off of Carlos Hyde? I mean, he has to prove himself in pass protection. Right. He has to be a receiver as well. Can he do that? Yeah,
he looks like a energetic young back, and it's whether when rookies come in, they have to be able to diagnose defenses in terms of where is that extra defender coming from if I'm in pass protection, because a lot of guys can carry the ball. Can he adapt to a zone blocking scheme? Is he going to be a good receiver out of the backfield? And he may be pressed in action knowing Carlos Hyde's had durability issues over his career. So that's why the Niners had to get some young, fresh legs in there, somebody that they're excited about. And Kyle Shanahan was excited about him. He convinced John Lynch to get excited about him. And so I think right now a lot of 49er fans are going, could he be the next, mid-round running back steal that we had in Frank Gore? 12 years ago.
And we don't have a whole ton of time left here, but let's get to one Twitter question, one that I like because we didn't want to leave out Solomon Thomas, the pick at number 3 for the 49ers, from, I can't even pronounce his Twitter name. How will the D-line shake out? Specifically, where do the high picks, Buckner, Armstead, and Thomas play, and how much? Because, for the third straight year, they took that top pick as a defensive lineman.
Yeah, I think the way they have it now is they want to use Solomon Thomas on the outside on an end on base downs, and have Buckner and Armstead inside as well, or one on the outside. The thing is, all these guys are versatile, and that's what they like. You're going to use those 3 guys bounce inside and outside. On passing downs, you're going to have Thomas shift inside, where his kind of, he's not as tall. These, Armstead and Buckner are 6'7". Thomas isn't that. He's got a much different body type, which is going to be great inside, where he can get the pass rush and get leverage. And so I think that's where they're going to use all these guys in different roles. So it's kind of hard to typecast one guy for one spot. They're going to be trying everybody out, because this defense needs as much help as possible to just try to get some pass rush generated, because they don't have an Alden Smith or a Charles Haley from back in the day that's going to strike fear into an opponent as a pass rusher.
All right, the offseason wears on for Cam. Be sure to give him a follow on Twitter. He will keep you updated on the latest with 49ers. We next go across the bay over to Alameda, where the Raiders held their minicamp last week. We got a chance to speak with 5th-round pick Markel Lee, which, most times 5th-rounders are coming in just fighting for playing time. This is a case where this is a guy who has a good chance to earn some starting time pretty early on in his rookie career. Joining me now, our Raiders beat writer Jimmy Durkin. Jimmy, we talked to Markel. Number one, he didn't know that the number he was wearing held some pretty big significance. He was wearing number 55 there in minicamp, which was Jack Del Rio's number. And on Twitter, immediately after he was drafted, his DMs blew up, his mentions blew up from Raider fans saying, "We need you." Like, if he wasn't feeling the pressure, he certainly is now.
Yeah, he's the guy that if you look at that roster, who they drafted, he's the guy that has the clearest path right to a starting job. They need somebody to come in at middle linebacker. We know Jack Del Rio isn't quite satisfied with what they've done to address the position. He, went on TV and said that, which is kind of a little nudge, a little message. Hey, Reggie, we need to address it still. So it could change before training camp comes around, but right now, Markel Lee, he's the one guy they've brought in that can play the Mike linebacker position, and he's got to play, he's got to produce.
And you said that right there that Jack Del Rio's like, we're not ready yet at this position. The only other player that they were able to bring in, free agent weak side linebacker Jelani Jenkins. It's May. There is still time, obviously, for some additions. Where does this team look to be able to fill that need going forward when it is, they're not ready yet?
Everywhere. We saw last year, a few weeks into the season, they brought in Perry Riley Jr., a guy who had been cut by the Redskins. He's still available out there. He's a street free agent. It's a matter of finding a dollar figure that he'll agree to, and that's kind of what was the hang-up last year, why it took him until into the season before they signed him. So he's a guy that will linger out there. They didn't give him a May 9th tender, so it won't affect, if another team signs him, it won't affect the compensatory picks. But he's a guy that, the Raiders are going to keep their tabs on.
So the Raiders' first-round pick at number 24, Gary Conley, the cornerback from Ohio State. Still a few more weeks until he finds out whether his name's going to get cleared in this alleged rape case, so there's been that hanging over him. On Friday when we talked to him at minicamp, those questions were asked, they were answered. He tried to really keep the focus on football, and what we did see with him out there is the Raiders kind of trying to figure out, okay, how versatile is this guy? They had him at slot corner, over 3 receiver sets, they moved him outside. He kept mentioning that word leverage. How do you see that playing into, that word specifically, playing into how he fits into this defensive backfield?
Well, yeah, it all depends on where, he's played both inside and outside, so he understands. If you're on that outside, you've got that barrier, that sideline that helps you. On the inside, you don't, so it's all about gaining leverage. And he's a guy, they're going to get him a lot of experience in both spots, because with 2 veteran cornerbacks, if those guys perform up to their capabilities, you want to have Conley come in and be your slot. But if those guys don't, or if in certain matchups, say when they play the Patriots, you got to pick your poison. Do you have him defend Edelman in the slot, or do you put him on Brandon Cooks on the outside? Because they don't want to put Sean Smith probably back out there on Brandon Cooks again and give up another 98-yard touchdown. So, getting him, some versatility and having him at both spots, that's what they're going to need out of him.
All right, let's jump right into some of our Twitter questions that we received via the BA Sports Insiders hashtag. So if you're not using that, be sure to do that, and we'll see your questions on the screen. First one from Raider Maverick. With the Raiders somewhat stacked at the wide receiver position with new recent additions, what are the chances they go into the season with 6 wide receivers? We saw this last year when they went in with 5.
Probably not great. I mean, you've got Cooper, Crabtree, and Patterson. Roberts, you figure, sticks around. And then it's have all those other guys compete. Your Johnny Holtons, your Jadon Mickens, your Ishmael Zamora, undrafted guy. If they keep all 4 of their tailbacks, with Elijah Hood joining the mix and then having Jameis Olawale, and you get Brad Seeley there trying to find a way to keep Tywan Jones as a special teamer, it's going to be really hard to keep a 6th receiver. So I don't see them doing that, but you'll probably try to keep 5 and sneak one onto the practice squad.
From the left coast wants to know, who will this year's version of @Rocket Rich, Jalen Richard, Seth Roberts, or Marquette King be? An undrafted free agent who not only makes the team but is a vital piece. And what we saw coming out of that rookie minicamp, the Raiders did sign 3 undrafted free agents, Najee Harris, the linebacker, not the one who's going to Alabama, and 2 defensive linemen.
Yeah, I like Chris Casher. He's a guy that played at Florida State, was one-time roommate of Jameis Winston, and he was kind of involved in him in a few off-the-field incidents. But he's a guy that we don't know who these guys are when we see them out there at their rookie tryout, because they don't even tell us their names if they're just on a tryout. But I kept writing down 62 because there was a guy that kept getting in the backfield. Turns out that was Chris Casher. So they need additional pass rushers on this team beyond your Khalil Max and your Bruce Irvins. Maybe he's a guy that makes the roster and gives them a little extra pass rush.
All right, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Bay Area Sports Insiders. Reminder, use the BA Sports Insiders hashtag, and we will answer your questions on the show coming up next week and into the further weeks. Be sure to give Jimmy, Cam, and Marcus a follow on Twitter, as they will keep you updated on the Warriors, Raiders, and 49ers. For Jimmy Durkin, Marcus Thompson, and Cam Inman, I'm Courtney Cronin. Thanks for watching.